Welcome back. Now we bring you a live session of the UN Security Council over the latest developments in the Middle East region, notably the situation in Syria.
Long-standing grievances exacerbated by wartime divisions and highlight persistent tensions linked to past abuses and sectarian mistrust. The recent events in Suqailabiyya illustrate this trend, where a localized dispute of a non-sectarian nature escalated into broader clashes between neighboring Muslim and Christian communities. These developments have reignited concerns among communities, particularly Christians. Feelings of insecurity led to the cancellation of religious celebrations. At the same time, it is important to note efforts by the authorities, including public outreach by President Bashar and security measures by the Minister of the Interior aimed at protecting the Christian community during Easter celebrations. And separately, local measures towards banning alcohol in Damascus also generated unease. While not directed against at any specific community, aspects of their implementation, including exemptions, were perceived as stigmatizing a particular community, while also impinging on personal freedoms of citizens. Mr. President, economic hardship is translating into social unrest. Across the country, new sets of protests are emerging. Last Friday, peaceful demonstrators in Damascus called for improved living conditions and political reforms. They were confronted by a counter-demonstration that escalated into physical violence, resulting in injuries. We welcomed the intervention of security forces that separated the groups and prevented further escalation. At the same time, we emphasized the importance of addressing growing popular concerns. And in this context, I welcome the ongoing efforts to develop a poverty reduction strategy and ensure transparency, priorities that were emphasized by the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Economic and Industry in our discussions earlier today. Mr. President, we note preparations to hold indirect elections for 9 vacant seats in the People's Assembly from 3 districts in Hasaki Governorate. We look forward to information on when the elections will be held, as well as the announcement of the 70 presidential appointees and the opening session of the Assembly. With over 6 months since the initial voting took place, it is essential for the viability of the transition that a functioning and widely representative legislature is established as soon as possible. A priority for the forthcoming People's Assembly will be the review and enact legislation aligned with the aspiration of the Syrian people, including a law on transitional justice in coordination with the National Commission on Transitional Justice. And the adoption of a comprehensive framework on transitional justice, grounded in inclusive consultations, would be an important step towards strengthening legal certainty and public confidence. And the same applies regarding the work of the National Commission on Missing Persons and its legislative framework. I encourage the Syrian authorities to make full use of the Office of Cooperation by the International Impartial and Independent Mechanism, an independent institution on missing persons in Syria. And my office also remains ready to support these efforts. Mr. President, a sound legislative basis for reforms is also essential for economic recovery. Syria's economic outlook remains fragile. The regional conflict has raised import costs, disrupted supply chain, and affected food production. Commendable efforts to improve service availability, such as electricity supply, have often been accompanied by significant price increases. This underscores the need to strengthen reforms to support investment. We welcome the engagement of the Syrian authorities with the World Bank and the IMF on this. We equally stress the importance of continued action on sanctions relief and to address the legacy of sanctions. And we must guard against regional tensions diverting international attention and resources away from Syria at a time when exactly the opposite is needed. Mr. President, Syrian women continue to play an active role in the political transition. At the same time, like other members of civil society, they express growing concerns about restrictions on personal freedoms and their ability to operate without undue constraints. Our attention has also been drawn to recent online campaigns targeting women activists from one particular organization documenting human rights violations. Civil society organizations and individuals condemn the campaign, describing it as incitement. And Syrian women continue to call for greater representation in positions of authority and decision-making. Their meaningful participation remains essential to an inclusive and credible transition. Mr. President, sustained and coordinated international engagement is needed to support the Syrian-led political transition. The United Nations is ensuring close coordination among its in-country and system-wide leadership, evidenced recently by a joint visit of the Emergency Relief Coordinator and the Administrator of UNDP, as we will hear shortly from Under-Secretary General Fletcher. I'm also pleased that Special Representative of the Secretary General for Children in Armed Conflict, Fraser, will brief you shortly. We welcome the progress in preparing the Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework for 2027-2030, led by the Syrian government in coordination with the UN system and partners. The framework emphasizes durable solutions, social cohesion, and the humanitarian, development, and peace nexus as pillars of recovery, alongside accountable and transparent institutions. Mr. President, the peace dimension of this nexus underscores the importance of strengthening cooperation between our office and the Syrian government. I am grateful to the authorities for maintaining open channels with us. We have offered concrete ideas on areas of cooperation aligned with the office's mandate from the Council and the priorities identified by Syria. We're expecting shortly the government's feedback so that we can reach a shared understanding on next steps, including the relocation of the mission to Damascus at the earliest feasible date. And we stand ready to move forward immediately. In conclusion, I continue to welcome the Council's unity of purpose on Syria, as evidenced in its press and presidential statements and Security Council Resolution 2799, all of which endorsed the UN's political role in supporting Syria's transition. And we stand ready to continue to engage with Syria's government and society in this endeavor. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Cordoni for his briefing. I now give the floor to Mr. Tom Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's the nature of the crises on which I brief you and the increasingly challenging context in which humanitarians work that my updates to this Council tend to be sobering. But today I'm in a position to share a more positive trajectory. I will, of course, temper that hope with caution and realism. The improving picture I'll describe is following years of conflict and neglect. The scars are deep and the progress is fragile. When I visited Syria in December 2024, just days after the fall of the Assad regime, I encountered a country anxious, traumatized. The damage of the war was staggering. The humanitarian needs overwhelming. I visited Syria again last month with my UNDP colleague, Alexander de Croo. We saw progress. Millions of people are returning home, markets growing, more lights coming back on, the humanitarian reset working. And we heard from President al-Sharaa a compelling vision for Syrian-led recovery and growth, the restoration of essential services, the creation of conditions to allow people to leave the camps and return home. I believe that this approach, building on the real trust and partnership nurtured with us over the past year, is the right basis for our shared efforts. We're aligning our humanitarian plans with the No Camp and No Mine initiatives, ambitious efforts to help people go home and to accelerate demining. We jointly launched the Humanitarian Needs and Response Plan on April the 2nd, the first such plan launched inside Syria and with the Syrian government.